He drank, he swore, he ignored orders, and the U.S. Army fired him at the moment he was winning. In November 1943, the U.S. Army quietly relieved one of its most feared battlefield commanders. No court-martial, no disgrace parade, just a sealed order and silence. Major General Terry de la Mesa Allen Sr. had done exactly what American soldiers begged their generals to do in World War II. He led from the front. He took objectives faster than expected, and he killed Germans efficiently. Yet men like George S. Patton and Omar Bradley, men obsessed with discipline, appearance, and control, said Allen was dangerous, too loose, too profane, too close to his men. This film asks the question history avoids. Was Terry Allen fired because he failed, or because he succeeded the wrong way? And before we reach North Africa, Sicily, and the battlefield that ended his career, we must begin much earlier, with a boy who never fit the Army's idea of an officer.
Terry de la Mesa Allen Sr. was born in 1888 into a military family that expected discipline but produced a rebel. From the beginning, Allen showed intelligence without polish. He was sharp, aggressive, and impatient with authority he didn't respect. When he entered West Point in 1907, Allen didn't fail academically. He failed culturally. He clashed with superiors, ignored petty rules, and openly mocked traditions others treated as sacred. He graduated near the bottom of his class, a quiet mark that would follow him for decades. The Army tolerated Allen because it always needed fighters, but it never trusted him. Then came World War I. In France, Captain Allen led infantry units under relentless artillery fire. In 1918, during combat, he was shot through the face, a wound that would have ended most careers. Allen refused evacuation until his men were secure. This moment mattered, because from that day forward, Terry Allen believed one thing above all else. A general's place was where bullets were flying, not behind polished desks. The modern U.S. Army would never be comfortable with that belief.
Between the wars, the U.S. Army split into two philosophies. One side believed war was order, precision, appearance. Men like George S. Patton obsessed with discipline, uniforms, posture, and hierarchy. The other side believed war was chaos, noise, fear. Men like Terry Allen believed soldiers fought better when treated like humans, not machines. Allen swore constantly. He drank with enlisted men. He ignored saluting rituals in combat zones, and he openly mocked commanders who valued parade ground discipline over battlefield effectiveness. But something undeniable followed him wherever he went. His units performed. When Allen was given command of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, in 1940, he transformed it. Not into a polished showpiece, but into a hardened, aggressive killing force. Allen demanded only one thing from his officers: win fast, lose fewer men than the enemy. The Army noticed the results, but it also noticed the disorder, and it quietly began watching him.
On November 8, 1942, the U.S. Army invaded North Africa in Operation Torch, America's first large-scale ground war against Germany. Terry Allen's Big Red One hit the beaches, inexperienced but aggressive. They made mistakes. They took losses. But they adapted faster than any other American division in theater. Allen ignored rigid command structures. He pushed battalion commanders forward. He tolerated battlefield improvisation that would have earned punishment elsewhere. German officers soon noticed something unusual. Allen's division never paused longer than necessary. They attacked at odd hours. They pressed flanks without waiting for perfect coordination. It was effective, and it terrified German defenders used to predictable opponents. But higher headquarters, especially Omar Bradley, saw something else, a general they could not fully control. By early 1943, Allen had won battles, but he had also created enemies, and the price for that defiance was already being calculated.
In July 1943, the Allied invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky, opened a new front against Hitler's Europe. Once again, Terry Allen's 1st Infantry Division was placed at the center of the fight. The terrain was brutal. Mountain ridges, narrow roads, German and Italian forces dug into high ground. Allen pushed his regiments aggressively inland, often faster than neighboring units. At Troina, one of the hardest-fought battles of the entire campaign, Allen's men assaulted fortified German positions for 6 days under artillery fire and counterattacks. Losses were heavy, but the Germans broke. Field reports told a clear story. The Big Red One had done what others could not. Yet behind the lines, Allen's reputation followed him. His headquarters was loud. Officers dressed informally. Discipline was uneven. To frontline soldiers, Allen was exactly who they wanted. To senior commanders, Sicily confirmed their fear. Allen won battles, but left chaos behind him. And chaos, in the eyes of the U.S. Army, was unacceptable.
Omar Bradley believed in order, quiet professionalism, control. Bradley was not a coward, but he was methodical, precise, and deeply suspicious of commanders he couldn't predict. Allen made Bradley uneasy. Inspection reports from Sicily noted poor unit appearance, lax rear area discipline, and inconsistent command structure. None of it mattered to soldiers at the front. All of it mattered to Bradley. Privately, Bradley concluded that Allen's division succeeded in spite of him, not because of him. This was the core disagreement, and it was philosophical, not personal. Bradley believed war demanded order first. Allen believed war demanded results first. Even George S. Patton, Allen's immediate superior, hesitated. Patton disliked disorder, but respected battlefield aggression. He warned that removing Allen risked breaking a division that fought well. Bradley disagreed. And in the modern U.S. Army, the man who controlled the paperwork often outranked the man who inspired the troops.
In August 1943, shortly after Sicily fell, Terry Allen was summoned. There was no shouting, no accusation of incompetence, no public humiliation. He was simply told he would no longer command the 1st Infantry Division. Officially, the reason was organizational efficiency. Unofficially, it was clear Allen was too unpredictable for the next phase of the war. To the soldiers of the Big Red One, the decision felt incomprehensible. Their general had led them through North Africa and Sicily. He had shared danger, ignored rank in combat, and demanded only courage. Allen accepted the order without protest. He saluted, and he left quietly. But in the Army's eyes, he was finished. What they did not understand was this: they had relieved a general, but they had not broken the man.
For months, Terry Allen disappeared from the war's main narrative. No headlines, no commands in Europe. Then, quietly, The Army gave him another chance. In 1944, Allen was assigned to form and train the 104th Infantry Division, a unit without a legacy, without expectations. Allen did not try to make them look impressive. He made them dangerous. He trained them to move at night, to attack silently, to operate in darkness where German doctrine failed. The division earned a name the enemy would soon learn to fear: the Timberwolves. By the time they entered combat in November 1944, German units reported something unsettling. American soldiers who attacked after sunset struck fast and vanished before dawn. The Army had tried to sideline Terry Allen. Instead, it had unleashed him again. And this time, the results would be impossible to ignore.
In November 1944, the 104th Infantry Division entered combat in Northwest Europe. Unlike most American divisions, they did not announce their presence with daylight assaults or massed armor. They moved at night. Under Terry Allen's direction, Timberwolf units crossed rivers in darkness, infiltrated German lines silently, and attacked command posts before defenders fully understood what was happening. German reports soon described an unfamiliar pattern: American infantry that fought like hunters, not machines. Allen had built the division deliberately this way. He believed night erased rank, ritual, and parade ground discipline, leaving only leadership and trust. To the men, Allen was visible. He visited forward positions after dark, ignoring blackout rules that kept most generals far from danger. Higher headquarters noticed something unsettling. The same behavior that once got Allen fired was now producing clean breakthroughs, and this time the enemy was taking notes.
By late 1944, German intelligence reports began referencing a new American division on the Western Front. They noted unusual movement patterns, attacks after midnight, rapid withdrawal before counterfire. German soldiers began calling them Die Nachtjäger, the night hunters. These were not elite paratroopers. They were ordinary American infantry, trained differently. Allen's methods stripped away comfort. Night marches replaced daylight drills. Officers learned to command without shouting. Units learned to trust instinct over rigid orders. The cost was exhaustion, but the benefit was fear on the other side. Unlike earlier in his career, Allen now had proof. The same army that once said he lacked discipline was benefiting from the very qualities it rejected. Still, recognition remained limited. Allen was useful, but not celebrated. And in wartime bureaucracies, useful did not always mean respected.
George S. Patton rarely defended other generals publicly, but privately he never forgot Terry Allen. Patton believed Allen had been removed not for incompetence, but for nonconformity. To Patton, Allen represented something the Army feared, a commander soldiers followed instinctively. While Patton enforced discipline through fear and reputation, Allen earned loyalty through proximity. The two men were opposites, yet Patton understood war required both types. After Allen's success with the 104th, Patton reportedly remarked that Allen had been misunderstood. It was not an apology. It was a soldier's acknowledgement. The Army never reversed Allen's earlier relief. There would be no public correction. But among combat commanders, the verdict was quietly changing. By early 1945, the Timberwolves had crossed into Germany. They had fought through the Roer River battles and pushed east under constant pressure. Allen never sought headlines. He focused on keeping casualties lower than expected and moving forward. When the war ended in Europe in May 1945, Terry Allen was not listed among the famous names.
He gave no victory speeches. He received no parade command. Yet veterans remembered something else. They remembered a general who stood close enough to hear bullets, who swore like a private, who cared more about survival than appearance. History would record Allen as controversial, but for the men who fought under him, the judgment was simpler. He brought them home. And in the end, that was the only metric that mattered.
When Germany surrendered in May 1945, the U.S. Army immediately began shaping its official memory of the war. Victory had to look organized, efficient, predictable. Terry Allen did not fit that narrative. He was reassigned, then quietly retired from active command. No scandal followed him, but no celebration did either. Official histories focused on logistics, coordination, and command structures. Men like Bradley fit cleanly into that framework. Men like Allen did not. Allen returned home carrying no bitterness. He rarely spoke publicly about his relief for his return. To friends, he expressed only one belief: that war rewarded those who adapted faster than the enemy. The Army moved on, but soldiers remembered.
In the years after the war, letters and memoirs began to surface. Not official histories, but personal ones. Veterans of the 1st Infantry Division and the 104th described Allen in strikingly consistent terms. They did not call him polished. They did not call him gentle. They called him present. They wrote about a general who appeared without warning in forward areas, who asked about casualties by name, who understood fear not as weakness, but as reality. For these men, Allen's profanity was irrelevant. What mattered was trust. No inspection report could measure that. No staff officer could quantify it. But in combat, trust meant survival.
The U.S. Army is an institution built for permanence. It values predictability because predictability scales. Terry Allen did not scale easily. His leadership relied on personality, instinct, and personal presence, traits difficult to replicate across millions of soldiers. To promote Allen's model would require admitting that rigid discipline was not always superior, that battlefield success sometimes came from flexibility, not uniformity. That was an uncomfortable conclusion, so the Army preserved a safer lesson: order produces victory. Allen's story became a footnote, useful in practice, inconvenient in theory.
Terry Allen was never trying to defy the Army. He was revealing its limits. His success forced a question the institution preferred not to answer. What happens when results come from methods outside regulation? Allen did not replace discipline. He reprioritized it. Discipline to him meant mission focus. It meant adaptability. It meant knowing when to ignore the manual to save lives. In that sense, Allen was not a rebel. He was a mirror.
History rarely delivers clean verdicts. It offers tensions instead. Terry Allen won battles. He lost institutional trust. George Patton enforced fear and order. Omar Bradley enforced structure and control. All three were necessary. None were sufficient alone. So the question lingers, not as judgment, but reflection. If you were a soldier in World War II, would you choose the general who demanded perfect uniforms or the one who demanded survival? That question, more than any medal or dismissal, is Terry Allen's legacy.
The U.S. Army never formally reversed Terry Allen's relief from the 1st Infantry Division. There was no apology, no footnote amendment. But there was something else. After the war, night operations, once considered risky and unnecessary,
became standard doctrine. Small unit initiative was emphasized. Flexibility in command gained institutional acceptance. These were not labeled as Allen reforms. They didn't need to be. The Army absorbed what worked and discarded the name attached to it. That is how institutions evolve, not through admission, but through imitation. Allen never claimed credit. He did not need it. History was already adjusting its verdict.
There is no medal for preventing unnecessary deaths, no citation for intuition, no ribbon for earning trust. Military records measure terrain gained and enemies destroyed. Soldiers measure something else: who stood close when things went wrong. Allen never mastered politics. He mastered presence. In the chaos of war, that mattered. His critics were not wrong. Allen bent rules. He tolerated disorder. But his defenders were not sentimental. They remembered outcomes. In the final accounting, Allen's record showed what the Army could not ignore. He delivered results without wasting men. That, in combat, is the hardest skill to teach.
Terry Allen's story is not about rebellion. It is about leadership under pressure. Modern armies still struggle with the same tension: control versus initiative, order versus adaptability. Allen's career warns against confusing appearance with effectiveness. It reminds us that rules exist to serve missions, not replace them. He was not the model officer. He was the necessary exception. And every army, in every war, eventually needs one.
Terry De La Mesa Allen Sr. died in 1969, far from the battlefields that defined him. No statues were raised. No doctrine manuals bore his name. But among those who followed him into combat, his reputation endured. He was not a gangster. He was not a renegade. He was a general who understood that war is fought by frightened men in imperfect conditions, and led accordingly. History may remember Patton's speeches, Bradley's plans, Eisenhower's decisions, but soldiers remember who stood with them when orders failed. That is why Terry Allen remains, quietly and without ceremony, the soldier's general.